Welcome to the Farming on Purpose podcast, a podcast for farmers and ranchers ready to shift for a stronger future. Today's challenges in agriculture are new, but the grit and determination required to be successful are not. On the Farming on Purpose podcast, you'll hear how producers of all sizes and practices are moving mountains for things they believe in, all in the name of an industry that keeps growing and innovating for a stronger food system and stronger farm families. I'm your host, Lexi Wright, and I'm excited to discuss where producers are finding success, challenging the status quo, striving for better, and keeping our heritage alive, all while producing the food we depend on. Welcome back to Farming on Purpose. Today I have Olivia Harms here with me, and you may recognize her if you stream anything on Paramount Plus. She has been on the national stage on The Road, which is a music competition series on CBS, and she has created her own Rhinestone cowgirl sound. You're the daughter of Western Music Hall of Fame member Joni Harms, and got to debut on stage when you were just 2 years old, which I think is so incredible. I can just imagine your mom taking a little 2-day-old baby out there on stage. But you have had a lot of success in the last year or the last couple years, winning Cowgirl Magazine's 30 Under 30, being on that class list in 2022, Singer of the Year, first annual Women of the West Gala, Country Music Artists Association. There's a lot going on that you've been up to in the last couple years. And then you also grew up on a ranch in Oregon and now are living on a ranch with your husband. And so while you're a little bit different than the guests that we usually have on the show, I'm really excited to have you here because I think so many of us turn to Western music for inspiration, to think about, how to process things and just to kind of support the life that we live and how we feel about it. So I'm really excited to have you here, Olivia. Do you want to tell us just a little bit more about yourself and kind of what led you down this path?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you got like all the highlights and the spark notes. Well done. Well done. Yeah, I grew up on a place that's been in my family in Canby, Oregon since 1872. And something that I get all the time and that I'm actually very passionate to correct is people say there's cowboys and cowgirls in Oregon. Like, no way. And I know what you see on the news. I get it. Like, we're not necessarily super proud to claim Portland ourselves, and we won't get into that. But there are very, very prominent cattle producers, cowboys, cowgirls all over Oregon. And I'm really proud that I get to have that in my background. And so we've been there since 1872. I believe I am sixth generation on the ranch, which is amazing. Like it's so cool to have that same piece of property that my great great grandparents have walked on and like served their family from, and now I still get to carry it on. And although my brother is taking over that ranch because I have moved south to another place that a lot of people are surprised to know that cattle production is very prominent in California. I never thought I was going to live in Northern California or California at all, but God had different plans for me and he introduced me to my California cowboy. And so now I live in Northern California and I help my husband on his family ranch. So, like I guess we're just here to play music, but then at the same time, like be kind of an advocate and say, yeah, like I know sometimes people don't expect a lot of like Western culture in those two states and maybe like cowboy culture in those two states, but actually we're here and we're very much alive. So it's been neat that that's kind of been a part of my job that, I get to highlight and say, this is where I'm from. And people are always so shocked, they just assume if you're going to play country music or if you're a cowgirl or say you come from a ranching background, usually they're thinking about Texas or Montana or Wyoming or, like the breadbasket. And all along here's just some out in the West Coast as well.
I think people forget how big states truly are. Like the state is not defined by just one city that's in it. So much more to
Yeah.
it. Well, that's really neat. And it's really cool that you have gained this voice and are using it to advocate for agriculture. What are some of the things that you have had to talk about that people have challenged you on or that have come up over the years as you've spoken about your culture and your heritage?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I just got back from national finals rodeo, and that's another big part of my life is I play for a lot of rodeos. And so when I go to more urban areas and I talk about, being part of production ag and having a cow-calf operation, that's something that a lot of times we need to reassure people that like these animals are treated so well because they're our livelihood. We take care of the ground so well because we need the ground to keep giving to us so we can keep feeding our families and doing what we love to do. And so like I have this great position where I can kind of inform people in a very lighthearted way without getting like deep into it. Like a lot of times that sometimes, we deep dive and I can just be like, hey, in a very lighthearted, like super casual way, like we need to take care of our animals because they take care of us. We need to take care of our land because it takes care of the animals that take care of us, and especially with like beef and farming and like so many things that are intertwined. Like these animals have the best lives, and that's the same with rodeos. So when I go play rodeos or go to the national finals and you get people that are really curious about what's going on, it's the same spiel. Like these animals are spoiled beyond belief. They're taken like they're basically at the spa all the time. If it was like like a parallel to what it would be like for a human, because they're getting the best food, they're getting really star treatment because they're athletes or because we need to take care of them so that we can go on with the career that we love. So I think when you kind of tie that together and you help teach people that like we're not just out here like I don't know what they dream up, but we're not out here like being crazy. We actually love the animals and love the land that give back to us.
I wonder where that comes from a lot. The thought that something sinister is going on because it's baffling to me.
It
Like,
is.
yes, you see some random videos that get tons of publicity about like a random one-off scenario, and it's confusing on where that kind of narrative kind of takes root because some people really grab onto it and it's their whole personality of agriculture is doing wrong. And it's nice that you can take that in such a lighthearted way and provide that advocacy because I think we need both. We do need the deep dives. We need the education and the science-backed information for people to learn, but we don't get to that point if we don't first spark their interest and have the willingness to have a conversation like what you're doing. So, man, this is a unique career path for someone who grew up on a ranch. What's that been like? How's your career kind of led you down this road?
Yeah, so I have both. I grew up on a ranch like we talked about, and then my first day on stage was at 2 days old. So my mom had a very similar upbringing to what I was able to have. She was born into a musical family. They didn't have music for a career as I did with my mom, but she was in a musical family. They were always playing, and she pursued this as her career while also loving the ranch and planning to take it over. My dad, and it was just like really cool that I was able to go travel with her and see the world, see different parts of the country, different parts of agriculture, play music. That's something that I like have a really strong passion about, but also go home, get my hands dirty and like kind of ground myself again in like back in the dirt and the soil, like if you will. Like it was very grounding to be able to go out, pursue my dream, but then come back and I feel like get recharged because I was able to go back to my real roots of like working and then get song inspiration from writing or gathering or whatever we did all the time. And those two together, I think really helped curate like the sound of music that I like to make. It's very traditional country. It's like kind of cowboy country. A lot of times I get told that I'm more like country and western. I'll take it all, whatever brand of music you want to call me. I'm very flattered to have. I think it's a torch that I'm like very proud to carry forward and try to make music that anyone in agriculture or that's curious about agriculture can listen to and sort of relate to, or like go honky tonk into, because at the end of the day I think all those things kind of mix all around in the same pot because they all touch each other.
For sure. And I think that's what people love, or at least what things that I love about country and Western music is that you can tell. You can tell that it is real. It's based on real experiences, on real emotion, and it's just so evident in the lyrics that's part of it. What are some of the things that you in your music career feel like have been things that you'll never forget or moments that you're like, this is one that I'm going to hold on to?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I think this year has really been packed with quite a few of them. And maybe like we'll talk some more about the road later, but that was an opportunity that I did not see coming. I never considered myself someone to be pursuing reality TV or a music competition show. No shame in it at all. I'd lived in Nashville for a while, and I sometimes would see some of the contracts that my friends would show me after applying to a show like that. And I think those opportunities are incredible for somebody. You just kind of have to assess what you're willing to let go, or like what negotiation works for you. And for me, a lot of times I was like, I don't want to give up that much of my original music. I'm not really in music to be famous anyways. Like the goal is to find more people that like my music, and that I can affect their lives with music and bring them some joy, hopefully. But I was always like, I don't need it that bad. I just want to make people happy, and do music however I'm supposed to use it for my life. And so earlier this year, when I got the opportunity to be on CBS and Paramount Plus's brand new show called The Road, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, because there was no audition process. There wasn't like a, hey, we're advertising, come try out. I literally got a call from Taylor Sheridan, and he was like, I've seen you play. I was just curious if you'd be interested in being on the show. And I was like, what a weird day. Yeah, of course. And so definitely like holding on to that, because it's been life changing, to be able to make these connections, be on TV. I was so proud that they really did highlight me as a cowgirl. Maybe one of the moments that I won't say I'm not proud of, but like it was a little shocking for me to see on national TV, was they got me saying that I know how to castrate. So now all of America knows. But like, what a really cool experience to be able to play my original music on such a large platform, national TV and streaming services. Like really, really cool. And that's something that I will hold with me for a long time, and definitely has helped shape my career.
Yeah, that is awesome. And it's cool to hear you kind of talk about what that process was like for you because I think that's something like folks, especially like me, we live in very rural America, just have no understanding or experience with. We see the finished production that comes across our screen, but we have no idea what happened to get it there or, the behind the scenes contracts and compromises that had to be made. And I think that is very interesting because a lot of times it's folks like you who get those opportunities who are speaking on behalf of folks like us. And because, there's just not that many of us in rural America for one, and for two, who are involved in agriculture as a job or as a lifestyle anymore. So that's America's representation of who we are is people like you who are on the screen. And that's really exciting to hear that you were able to represent yourself that way and in such a positive light because I know that's not always the case that happens when people are in those positions. They don't get a lot of say in how that comes out.
Yeah, I was really thankful for that. And I mean, hopefully I did it justice. I feel like that's a heavy load to carry, and try to, make
Yeah.
people in my agricultural industry proud. But I was really glad that they were asking for, they said, do you have footage of you and your husband on the ranch? Do you have footage of the ranch that's been in your family since 1872? Like, we need pictures of you working cows, and we don't just want to see the pictures of you up on stage playing. We would like those too. But like, it was really just neat that they wanted to have the content to share
Mhm.
of what I do when I'm not traveling and when I'm not working. And so it was really crazy. I think I probably bombarded those poor people with so much videos of cows and my dogs and everything else from home. But the experience was like definitely out of this world, one that I could never really imagine. You get a call, and then you have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops and contracts and sign NDAs and do background checks. And I mean, they even had me do like a psych test to make, I
Oh,
don't know what
wow.
they were checking for, but like a proctored psyche test. My husband is he's such a fart. He's like, are you sure you're gonna pass that thing? And I'm like, I don't know. But there's definitely a lot behind the scenes before you finally get, even just to like what they called the executive callback portion, where they flew a number of us, not their top 12, because they had a little larger selection than just the 12 off the bat. And they flew us all to Burbank and we did executive auditions in front of Blake and Taylor and the CBS crew. And I think from there, they were kind of wanting to make sure that they thought we could sing or whatever it was they were looking for, that we wouldn't totally crack under pressure, and maybe that we had a good personality for TV or whatever it was they were looking for. And then from there, we all flew home and they said, we'll get back with you in the next couple days and let you know who made it. And so crazy. So I just came home and I started praying about it. And I was like, okay, I hope this is what your plan for me is. But if not, I know you got something better. And thank God he was saying, yep, you can go. And so I tried to shine his light and shine the light for agriculture and play some traditional country music. And I think I met a few new fans, and that's the best case scenario of what could have come out of it.
That sounds like such a good experience. Long were you guys on the road filming for?
Yeah, the filming process started the last week in February. And then from there, we moved on to our first stop in Fort Worth, Texas. And we did our first show. And then we did our second show in Dallas. And then that's where I was cut. So I think I was gone for about 3 weeks. And then from there, it carried on for gosh, quite a while, and then filming finally wrapped beginning of April. So we got to all fly back for the finale, which you guys can tune into here in a couple of weeks or so. But it was for the folks that went on for quite a while. It was definitely a long process, and even for me, just to be gone inevitably, like you don't know when you're getting to go home. That's kind of hard. To usually, I can be counting down the days until I get back home and see my husband and my dogs and everything, and to just leave without knowing when I'm going to come back was kind of hard.
Yeah, that's hard to pack for, I think.
For sure.
How do you, I mean, I know everybody's role on the ranch in their operations looks different, but it sounds like you probably have a pretty unique one where, you're traveling for your music and you have basically a whole separate list of responsibilities with that. And then you also live on the ranch. What does that look like as far as a balancing act for you day to day?
It's definitely ever changing, like there's no day is ever the same. People say, what's the average day in the life of Olivia Harms? And I really don't have an answer because it's so drastically different all the time. But usually when I get to come home for extended amounts of time, then definitely like diving back into my ranch wife duties of, making sure that I can pull my weight on the property. I'm pretty handy with a vaccine gun, so that's usually the job they give me when we're processing or branding. But like when I'm home, I'm headed out and writing and gathering or moving or helping our neighbors brand, or whatever folks normally are doing in a ranch setting is what I'm doing when I'm home. And then on top of that, trying to be a good wife and trying to make sure the house is clean, and he's got laundry and good food done, and then prep and get the freezer filled with food for him, and then head back out on the road and pack and unpack and then do all the other things that I'm supposed to do to keep my job afloat, like stay on top of social media. That's a whole monster of its own. And then like handle emails and make sure that, I have a string of gigs lined up for the next few months or the next year, because I am still in charge of my own booking, and trying to do like, wear all the different hats can definitely be tricky sometimes. But I think, anytime that you are chasing a dream or self-employed, it is really more of a 5 to 9 instead of a 9 to 5. And like my husband and I say that all the time. We're just like, I think there's different breeds of people. And I think if you're a self-employed musician, you can be pretty similar to a lot of folks in agriculture, because there's really no stopping. You don't just get home at the end of the day and say, okay, well, cool, let me turn on the TV because all my duties are done and now I just get to chill. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's the life that someone has chose, but it's definitely not the life that we get to live and that we wouldn't want to live anyways. Agriculture and music is a lifestyle choice, not a not like you're just your normal job.
Yeah, and I think so many don't realize that like you said, you are a self-employed musician. Your music is your business. So it's not just like you just show up and do the show. You're
Yeah.
doing all of the back work, all of the legwork that happens before that. And that's a lot to keep track of in your day-to-day life. What are some of the challenges or things that you've had to overcome in figuring out, what works for you and your family?
I think time management is honestly like one of the hardest things. Like there's just sometimes there's not enough time in the day, and that's my biggest hurdle, I think, is to try to be, whether it's three jobs, wife, like ranch wife, and then like musician, like all those things are kind of like their own job on,
Hmm.
all in their own right. And so to merge them all together and then try to make time for each thing and then feel like you're doing each job justice can be really tricky to try to figure out, like, okay, we're going to start our day at, 5 or 6, and I would kind of like to go to bed by like 8 or whatever. You're kind of thinking, well, how do I fit it all in? Social media, I think, has got to be one of the hardest things. Every day is a challenge to try to do better and master the algorithm or figure out what people are wanting to watch. I've tried to get back into TikTok. I feel like I'm a little on the older side to be doing TikTok, but it's so important in today's world. So I think just all of that together and then saying like, okay, well, I've done the social media for today. I like caught up on my emails. I tried to like cook, do the wife life stuff. I like went out and checked the cows and got the dogs ran and all the things you're supposed to do. And then you're thinking like, oh shoot, I'm still supposed to write music. I'm supposed to like create new songs for people to listen to. And then like at the end of the day or when you get a free minute, have the time to feel inspired after you've worked and like done all this other stuff can be like a huge challenge. I know there's been a lot of times where I've fallen out of like really wanting to write because I'm just dog tired and I'm like, I don't feel creative right now. I just don't want to get my guitar out. I just came back from a 3-week run. I don't want to be like playing. I just want to sit there and not look at it since I've had
Yeah.
to be on it so much. And so I think all those things are things that you kind of have to push past to keep going because at the end of the day, they're still really important.
And that is a lot to balance. I think that's one of the things that so many listeners find and that they tell me that they struggle with is trying to balance all of the different responsibilities, for one,
Hmm.
figure out how to fit it all in the day, just like you said. And then two, a lot of them are business owners trying to create marketing for their business that requires some creativity. And that creativity just isn't snap in at 8:30 at night when you're like, oh my gosh, this is what tomorrow looks like. What advice do you have for folks to maybe kind of keep that passion or that creativity spark alive when there's so much going on in their day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think the best thing I found for me is like if I'm really at a point where I feel like, ugh, like I'm starting to lose it, I usually have to take a day off. Not that there's like ever a day off per se in our world, but I really just like try to say, okay, I am not gonna deal with anything Olivia Harms today.
Mm.
And just like if it adds up and becomes a mountain for tomorrow, that's fine. But like I just need a day where I go out and I'm out with the dogs and the horses and my husband and the cows, and we just go do the ranch duties and we focus on that for the day. And like it kind of just like brings you back to what really matters. Not that my job doesn't, but like at the end of the day, you think about like, okay, well, this is how it started. This is all God's creation. This is all going to be here tomorrow, and that will be here tomorrow for me to deal with too. But like at the very end of the day, this little family right here is what matters, and this is the most important. And I can, whatever that is, I can deal with like tomorrow's things. And then usually I wake up the next day and I make a hectic, crazy like list. And if you can like sort of get through your list and you kind of start knocking them down and then you remember why you're doing this to begin with. I think it all kind of comes back into perspective, but I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a little break and letting yourself remember what's important and then like saying, okay, I am still passionate about this. And like one day isn't the end of the world. Because if you're anything like me, sometimes I let it all pile on. And then I
Mhm.
look at this huge mountain and then I like don't even know where to begin because it just seems like an elephant is sitting on you. And then you have to say, okay, what's most important? We can get it done, make a list. My OCD kicks in, and then we can start working our way through the list, and it's always okay.
I think that's great advice. Reconnecting to the things that matter most is really a good advice. And it's hard to manage sometimes to
Yeah.
turn the phones off or make the email stop dinging at you or whatever it takes to cut those distractions, but definitely worth it if you can make it happen. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about your music because I think it's a lot to put yourself out there and be creative in such a public format. So I'd love to know more just about how you feel about that process and maybe some of the things that you have done in your work that you really hope people take away from.
Absolutely. Well, since the beginning, I always tried to make sure that my music was really authentic. I think people kind of have a sixth sense for things that are authentic and things that are not. And so even when I started writing songs at 11 or 12, maybe they weren't, the quality that they are now. I don't even know if they're quality now, but they were just different. They were still from a very true spot, like my very first song that I wrote and I was really proud of is one called Can Be, and it's about my hometown of Canby. And I remember thinking, well, if I'm going to do this for my career, I have to have a song about where I'm from so people get to know me better and they know about this little girl that's, in 4-H and FFA and all these things. And so I sat down and I worked on it and my hook was you can be anything you want to be in Canby. Now you can't do that with every town, but I got lucky.
That's fortunate.
It's fortunate. And so, I worked on it for a while and then I ended up playing it a ton. I went down and I shared it the very first time with my mom in her office. And I said, I have this new song. I'm kind of nervous, but I'd like to share it with you. And she's, great. And she's still a legend in my eyes. So I was thinking, I'm going to get done with this. And she's going to probably have some critiques or some advice about the song and some things to change. And I got finished with it. And she was like, I don't have any critiques. I just wish that I could have thought of that myself because that's pretty clever. And so right from then on, I was like, well, I think there's something to it. If you write like really true about what's going on in your life or your experiences, I think people can just connect to it. Like I said, it's a sixth sense where there's another song I have called This Ain't My First Rodeo. And I wrote it thinking like, okay, sometimes in life when you're constantly traveling, I feel like musicians and rodeo athletes or folks in rodeo world, we really can connect on a similar way that like we're in a town for a night or two maybe, and then it's on to the next one. Like we never
Mhm.
get to sit still, we never get to stay in one place. And how many times in my single life have I met people and thought, well, this might be good connection or a relationship I'd like to pursue, but then I don't have any time. I gotta move on down the road to the next gig, and this person is moving on down the road to the next rodeo, and you don't mean to break hearts, but you do because you chose this life where you never sit still. And I've had a lot of people connect to that song too, which is I think just a sign that anything you do or anything you write, if it's coming from a place of truth and authenticity, I think that's the secret to the small amount of success that I've found in my music.
And that's so neat to hear, just, that those things do come from an authentic place. And I think you are right. People can sense it, but there's so much of what we hear. And, I'm not one of those people who's like the music police of like, oh, this is, what do they call it? Bro country or whatever,
Oh yeah.
that it's written to be a special thing that is not
Yeah.
necessarily like from an authentic experience, or if it is, maybe it's a 2-second authentic experience. And I think that's what I love just about some of the trends that are coming back in country music. And it's not necessarily just a trend, but the things that shine true about it is that authentic experience really comes out in the lyrics when you take the time to be creative like that. You have really kind of shown a light on this creativity aspect of it. What are some of the other pieces of your music career that you're enjoying or that you look forward to when you get to go out on the road?
Absolutely. I think that the thing about music that a lot of people don't know is like how I have become so close with my band because you're
Mm.
kind of like a little family on the road, like I love those boys. They're some of my best friends, and like the coolest thing is my husband also loves them. My husband trusts them, which is something that's funny to think about, like your wife headed out on the road with four dudes. That's probably like not your normal thing. But it's really been a blessing because like they're like my little family on the road. We have a great time together, and they totally bring my songs to life. I just wrote a brand new one a couple weeks ago, and we got it all fixed up and we took it to Vegas, and they just bring life and magic to a song where if I write it and it's guitar and vocal and maybe it sounds okay, but then when you get the fiddle on there, you get the steel on there, some good drums, the bass, like it really just brings everything together, and the song is like alive instead of just being a little guitar vocal voice memo, so
Yeah.
they definitely earn a lot more credit than they get because they're away from their families. They might not be like the face of it or like go out and do as much as I do, but they put in a lot of the same hard hours a lot of the time, and they're out there with me helping me lug my big suitcase around with all my boots and hair products and whatever else is in there. And so, they make being away from the ranch and my husband a lot easier because you're out there doing it as a team.
That's such a special bond. I can only imagine what that is like to kind of create a family outside of your family on the road. Well, you've shared I love the story that you're putting out there for the world to see about you and your ranch and your music. If somebody who is interested in having a creative career, what kind of advice would you give them to kind of push them forward?
I think you got to have thick skin. If you're going to be any type of a dreamer in today's world, you have to be willing to work really hard. And I don't mean for it to sound kind of glum and grim, but like you gotta be willing to put in the hours and put in the work. And you get told no more times than you get told yes, but I promise you it's worth it. It is absolutely worth it. I will preach and preach that it's hard, but I will also preach and preach that it's so worth it to chase your dreams and look back and say, "Oh my gosh, I've been doing this for 7 years, totally self-employed, and I have nobody to thank but myself. Like no one has
Mhm.
done this for me except for me. No one is paying my 9 to 5 job, like the checks or the success or anything that you get is because of your own hard work." And I think that's one of the most rewarding feelings that you can have, as long as you're prepared to sink in your teeth and get some dirt under your nails and know that there's a couple folks out there that will tell you no, and maybe not always have the kindest things to say, but I think that just makes you tougher, and I think it just makes the wins and the victories that you get all that much sweeter.
That's great advice. Well, Olivia, thank you so much for being on this show today. Folks want to check out your music or follow up and learn more about you. Where can they do that?
Yeah, please follow along and join me at a show sometime, or you can see how cute my dogs are, or my husband, or our cows on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. Like I said, all those things, just look up Olivia Harms music and you'll find me. And then there's tour dates and swag and all that good stuff on oliviaharms.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you've enjoyed spending time with us today, please take a moment to review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or join the conversation on social media. Do you have a topic you would like to discuss or know someone with a story to share? Apply to be a guest on the podcast at farmingonpurpose.com. You can follow the host of Farming on Purpose, Lexi, on your favorite social media platforms for more content by searching for Farming on Purpose. And remember, if you look around your table and aren't inspired by the people there, it's time to find a new seat.